You know, at some point you gotta ask yourself, what am I doing? What's the point of the life you lived? Is there even a reason to exist? The modern smartphone. A little trinket that at this point can nearly achieve anything. Communication, entertainment, accessing important information, and almost whatever the heart desires. One of those avenues is gaming. The ease of having a device playing whatever games you want whenever you want has been something people have been interested in for decades. And with how multifunctional and popular phones are, publishers decided to drop games for them. And of course our favorite spiky blue rat tried to cash in on the success. And the results? This series is God's greatest disappointment. No, not you, you just pissed me off. There have been a lot of Sonic games on mobile, some brand new made exclusive for the phone, some ports of previous games, and today I'll go through all of them to satisfy my underdeveloped brain. I'm your local idiot hipster, and let's see if Sonic mobile games are trash or treasure. Let's order this into categories and start off with ports and remasters. I'll get into these first because there's by far the least to talk about, and we'll start off with the first big two ports, the Sonic 4 duology, and yup, they sure do exist. I've had a lot of experience with these two games on mobile, and in terms of differences between versions, Episode 1 is easily the most interesting. The original version of the Episode 1 mobile port had a lot of changes with the console port, with worse visuals, models, and UI, but the biggest change came with Sonic himself, as he's straight up just using the model from the Rush games with Sonic 4's animations, aside from an original and pretty charming idle animation where you see him holding a phone and just vibing. But a couple years later, the port was updated to have Sonic's model from 4, but with the difference of it not having the shitty cel-shaded look to it, as does every model in the game, which actually makes this one the best version graphically, which is actually really hilarious. But the biggest changes this port made are the two mobile exclusive levels, which were actually cut from the base game. That's a long story about how Sonic 4 released and how it was leaked and Sonic Team delayed it that I don't want to get into. You can find this whole game's story online. These two levels being both Act 2 of Casino Street and Lost Labyrinth. Casino Street's second act is now a cramped pinball stage with the goal of collecting 1 million points. It was boring, it was slow, and in general it was unfun, having to play a waiting game for Sonic to ricochet across a single pinball map. The Lost Labyrinth stage is actually pretty fun, being a minecart stage you have to ride on to avoid pits and wrap your head around pretty fun camera angles. I actually have a soft spot for this stage, and honestly I like it a lot more than the console replacement. Fuck that torch. But beside those things, it's the same game you get if you play on the console version. Same levels, controls, moves, bosses, and special stages, all inside your iPhone 4. And the same goes with Episode 2, where it is literally the same game in all versions with zero differences whatsoever. And that is why I'm not talking about it. The only thing I'll bring up is that the mobile port of Episode 2 is my first Sonic game. No, not that mobile port, this mobile port. Episode 2 Lite is an interesting case. You see, back when it was released, mobile games actually cost money. Yeah, it was never just Minecraft. So publishers released demos for their games to incentivize for you paying the full experience. I never bought the game before 2015, so I made do with the Lite version for years. This version only came with 3 stages. 2 platforming stages being the first act of Sylvania Castle and White Park, and the first special stage if you beat Act 1 of Sylvania Castle in 1 minute and 30 seconds. That took me forever as a kid, and finally getting to the special stages felt so rewarding. Outside of that came some cool wallpapers. That was fun. This port isn't that special, but it was incredibly important to me, and this is my video! Sorry, that was loud. But now we get into the interesting cases with the original classic games. 1, 2, CD, and not 3, you sadly were never ported. Originally, we only had 1 and 2 being basic emulated ports with a touchpad, until Down from the Heavens, my glorious King Christian Whitehead descended with the Retro Engine remix, and thus, all world issues were resolved. Poverty, no more. World hunger, completely gone. Sonic forces, there are things you can't fix. These versions of the classics are the definitive version, and it's not even close, adding tons of quality of life improvements to the games. Widescreen support so you can see 2 feet ahead of you, the spin dash in Sonic 1, CD having the option between the CD spin dash and the actually good one. Speaking of CD, you can change soundtracks in a settings toggle. Bug fixes all around so the spike glitch doesn't cause you severe pain. Multiple playable characters with Tails and Knuckles in all games, except CD where Knuckles doesn't show up, with their own routes, achievements, time attacks, save feature in all games, remastered music. These ports are perfect in every way, and I can't stress enough how amazing they all are. The only, and I mean only issue with them is that until Sonic Origins, Sonic 1 and 2 were never ported to anything other than mobile, and Sonic 3 was never given the treatment in general due to legal issues with the soundtrack. But thank God we have the Origins collection with the definitive ways to play all these games, and I mean that. This is the best official way to play them. But for what we were given, these ports were phenomenal and a step above everything else. In fact, the engine that was used to power them was then used to power Sonic Mania, and the movement code from that was used to power Sonic Superstars. So these ports did so much to help 2D Sonic in the long run. I would end this off here, but we have one more Sonic port to cover, as last year Sega released a port of Sonic Mania to mobile exclusive to Netflix games. And with the previous track record of ports, you think this would go great, right? I mean, they did such a good job with the last couple ports, and they were literally built off the same engine as Mania. You'd think this would be a slam dunk. This is the company that made Sonic Heroes. Sonic Mania on Netflix is a terrible port, and it personally pisses me off because a mobile port of Sonic Mania has been a long-standing dream of mine for years. You see, as a child living in a family that didn't understand digital games, I had no way of playing Sonic Mania until Plus dropped, so I spent a year wishing I could play Sonic Mania on my iPad like all my other classic games. I wasted so much of my time on those bot scam YouTube videos and made me go to scam websites where I had to download 2 apps to verify the game to no avail. I played so many proof of concept engine builds on GameTroll to get the feeling, but it was never the feeling. So I spent every day hoping, even after I got my Plus version on the PS4, that a mobile port would come to feed my satisfaction. And I guess I finally got it, but the monkey's paw curled so hard with this one. For starters, the UI in this game is actually disgusting. Like, just look at it. The new UI is neither consistent to the game's original UI or to its own. Everything is so inconsistently sized, shaped, buggy, and overall just not clean. The game doesn't fit modern phone screens all the way, which isn't too big of a deal, it just kind of annoys me. The game has input lag and scratchy audio. If your display goes past 60 Hz, the game runs out of sync inconsistently. It's playable, but it's far from good. This would be so disappointing, seeing as I wanted a mobile port for years and it turned out to be trash. But thankfully, the fans had another thing in mind. This is the fan-made Sonic Mania mobile port, brought by the decompilation of the game's source code beautifully onto iPhone. Ultra-wide support, the original UI in Sonic CD Genesis-style UI for the gameplay, audio and visuals look and sound phenomenal. Genuinely, this is just a PC port but with touch controls, and it brings my soul profound peace. The fact we live in a world where this good port can exist and I can play it still drives me crazy, and I am so happy this exists. But now we finished with the ports, let's move on to original games. Now we go to the original games released for mobile, and if you ever thought it'd be any more consistent, you'd be mistaken. First up on the list is the first real mobile game the series ever released, Sonic Jump, because you never did that before. Sonic Jump, released in 2012, is actually a remake of the 2005 Java game by the same name, and is a level-by-level platformer that requires you to get to the top of a vertical stage with your incredible jumping abilities, dodging hazards and balancing yourself to get to the goalpost. In the end of every world, there's a boss fight against Eggman that gets increasingly harder. It reminds me a lot of a very similar mobile game called Doodle Jump, except it's not endless. It even has a silent yet boring story mode. In terms of controls and levels, it's a near flawless mobile game. It's simple, to the point, easy to understand, and the type of game you pull on the bus. My only issue is that all the levels outside the biome type are incredibly non-distinctive, like there's no difference between them whatsoever. But if you're bored looking at Sonic's ugly mug, this game has a roster of multiple playable characters with unique ability that's pretty extensive. It even has Blaze! Yeah, when was the last time I could say that? Overall, Sonic Jump is a really solid mobile game, and I recommend you give it a try. But what if you took Sonic Jump and stop making it unique in any way? You get Sonic Jump Fever. You see, the fever in the name is a signal that warns you if you play it, you'll get sick. Sonic Jump Fever is a sequel to Sonic Jump, but if you took out the story mode, made collecting characters infinitely more grindy, and had a boring-ass Chow Garden, there is literally nothing special to this game in comparison to the original, and after the servers went down, you only have one stage to roam. Overall, it's just mediocre incarnate. Man, I sure do wish Sonic doesn't make another half-ass sequel of a pretty good mobile game and stripped of any creativity whatsoever. Our next couple mobile games will be bundled together as they're extremely similar, being the Endless Runner trilogy. If you don't know what an Endless Runner game is, you're lying. But just to recap, they're usually 3D games where you're constricted to a couple lanes and have to last as long as you can by dodging obstacles in an endless map. You know, your Subway Surfers, your Minion Runs, and for our first game, your Sonic Dashes. Sonic Dash is a 2012 Endless Runner game released by Sega Hardline and is, unironically enough, the most installed and played Sonic game of all time. Yeah, our series magnum opus is a freaking mobile game. In terms of gameplay, it's exactly what you would expect. Last as long as you can in an endless map while dodging obstacles. It's really not original, but it doesn't have to be. The only original things about it are the boss fights against Eggman and weirdly Zaz from the Deadly Six, and they're not that good. And the super large roster of playable characters that really just amount to skins. Also the dash button you can boost. It's your basic Endless Runner, nothing special. But in 2014, Hardline released a sequel with original gameplay, mechanics, a roster of characters with unique and fun abilities, and the only catch? What are we doing here? Sonic Dash 2 is a game in the Sonic Boom line. You know, the series that crashed so hard because Sega doesn't care about its developers, with 2 terrible games, a really good TV show, and a third, also pretty good game on the 3DS. So they decided to make a mobile game specific to the brand, and the results have us one of the best Sonic mobile games. What? Sonic Dash 2 is the same game conceptually to the first but expanded. It has unique mechanics with character-specific abilities and the whole enter beam thing, and as such has more unique level design. It even has a level of strategy with you being able to choose 2 characters you can swap in checkpoint areas to maximize your lasting time. How is this the most complex mobile game in the bunch? Overall, it's surprisingly good. I recommend you give it a shot. And the music in the background is a banger. God damn! And lastly, we have Sonic Forces Speed Battle, which is somehow less automated than the actual Sonic Forces. It's the same idea as the previous 2 endless runners, except this is an online racing game where you race others in a map to the finish, and as such has level design a lot more branching and character abilities that are a lot more important to getting you a lead. It's at least the most interesting game in the bunch, with the only other thing of note being the insane support. Even to this day, it has so many characters to choose from, even having IDW and movie characters on the list. It even has Mephilus the Dark. Yeah, thank you, Sonic Channel guy. Overall, all 3 of these games are alright if you like endless runners, but I personally have played Subway Surfer so many times to the point where the gameplay doesn't excite me at all. But there's technically one more game in the genre to talk about, and it looks like all you need to do to be good is to be 2D and based off Sonic Lost World. Okay, maybe not that last part. Sonic Runners is a 2D endless running game, and it by far trumps every other game on the list, and it's not even close. It functions very similarly to Sonic Dash, with one key difference being the level design is actually incredible. The bonus of this game being in 2D is that it's much easier to design fast-moving and intricate levels, and it is seen in all of Sonic Runners. Every stage has so many platforms and springs and items that incentivize a hypnotic flow. It might be a little slow at first, but after a short encounter with Eggman that you experience every couple minutes, you're sped up. And after enough speed-ups, you reach top speed and the real game begins. Every action and decision you make has to be precise, as you get to a speed that requires you to have split-second reaction time, and once you get to top speed, you no longer access any rings, meaning you die in one hit. The gameplay loop is so perfect and satisfying, and it gets better with the expansive roster of characters with multiple typings, speed, power, and flight, each with levels inherently designed around them, but you can play specific stages with other types too. Mixing and matching stages and characters to find ways to access the most fulfilling run is some of the most fun I've had in any Sonic game. So what's the catch? What's the fucking why do I do this to myself? So what's the catch? Well, sadly, the mustache-twirling executives at Sega couldn't just make a fun game. Instead, they decided to fill that shit with EA-level microtransactions and a premium roulette, where you either grind to get red rings or you can spend your hard-earned money on a chance to get a new character. So I hope you got your parents' credit card handy, because we're teaching your child how to gamble. But outside of that hideous blot, this game is phenomenal and an excellent mobile experience, which is exactly why Sega refused to keep it. You see, in 2016, Sega saw Runners as a commercial failure, closed up all the servers and removed it from the App Store, meaning you can no longer play Sonic Runners, and it will eventually be left buried and forgotten. Is what I would say if the fans weren't the reincarnation of Jesus Christ and revived Runners from the dead. Sonic Runners Revival is a fan port of Runners built off a decompilation of the original game's source code, which not only brings back the entire game fully intact, but it adds its own new slew of content and characters, and just like that, my soul has been healed. They even fixed the premium roulette, thank God. Thank you so much for bringing back this classic in full glory. But what if you wanted to play Sonic Runners in its full glory, except it's not its full glory, it's more like the glory of being a homeless man outside of 7-Eleven. Why, you get Sonic Runners Adventure, of course! Sonic Runners Adventure is a spiritual successor to Sonic Runners, except it filters that spirit and charm through a corporate mandate and to a bland, soulless husk. It's Sonic Runners, but with less characters, less levels. They made it level by level, except of endless. No new music, worse graphics, worse mechanics, worse level design, but now you pay for it. Yeah, you pay $3 to our corporate overlords for a worst game. This isn't just bad, it's insulting on so many levels to the point where, you know what, I'm not gonna talk about it anymore. Fuck this game. So we now only have one more game left to discuss, and it's by far the biggest, most ambitious project for mobile games so far. Announced at the end of 2023, Sega announced a new out-of-nowhere mobile game, and oh my god, it's in 3D, the levels look so good! Multiple playable characters, this sick-ass animated trailer with fire music? Sonic Dream Team was announced out of nowhere, and it swung everyone's expectations out the park. It looked like a console game, a fully 3D semi-open style Sonic game with multiple characters and a matching of levels with a fully voiceover story, a new character, all in a mobile game. This looks absolutely perfect. How could this one go wrong? This company, man. In a shocking twist, this game was entirely made exclusive to Apple Arcade, a subscription service exclusive for Apple devices, making the market for this game incredibly limited, as you not only needed an Apple device of some kind, but the service too. Luckily for me, I had both an Apple device and the subscription as a free month-long trial, so I can play it and test out Sonic Dream Team. And my thoughts? Sonic Dream Team feels like it wants to be a console game, but it's also forced to be a mobile game, and that's its biggest flaw. Now, I've only played the game at launch, so I have no experience with the post-game content after the updates. I'm sure if and when I try it out, I'll be more positive on it, but with the current experience with this game, I'm incredibly mixed on it. First, beginning with the controls, they're pretty good, but with some issues. I use this DualSense controller throughout my playthrough, and overall it felt pretty intuitive. If you played any other Boost game, this should feel second nature to you. It's the physics where I have an issue, being that they feel overly polished, which is a weird description, but I'll try to explain it. The physics feel like they're so intent on keeping a fixed control over Sonic that they feel too restrained. The jump barely feels like it keeps any of your momentum, stomping wasn't in the game at launch, and worst of all, you can't jump off rails, which might seem like a small issue, but I promise the moment you play you'll understand. There are 6 playable characters, but there are only 3 playstyles shared between 2 characters, similar to SA2. Those playstyles being Speed, Flight, and Power, which basically function the same as the 3 playstyles in Sonic 3 and SA1. Speed characters have the boost, which every other character has, a pretty bad air dash, and the light speed dash that can access hidden paths in the levels. Overall, they're easily the most worthless type in the game. Flight is next, and while it's easily the best, it's not free of flaws. They have the ability to fly, shocker, but the only issue is that the length of the flight gauge is pitifully short, which is alleviated by the amount of regen rings around the paths, but they wouldn't have to do that if they just, increase the gauge, but who cares, am I right? Finally, we have the power type that can glide and climb. Only problem is that the climbing is relegated to specific walls like Frontiers, and the glide is the worst glide in any Sonic game ever. Like, how do you mess this up this bad? Turning is a nightmare with how loose it is. Even the pre-patch Frontiers glide is superior. Overall, the multiple playable characters here are they all control decently good, but their special actions are either useless or terrible. Before I get into my issues, let's briefly discuss the story, and like I said in my Superstars review, I do mean briefly, because this might be the most dragged out, boring story in the series. And unlike Superstars, where it's a classic Sonic game so it can get away with having a mid-story, this is a game with a heavy focus on story with a lot of cutscenes. The voice direction is awful though, especially Rouge. The animation was actually really good, lively, bouncy, and properly uses Sonic's eyes instead of his eyelids. But now we come into this game's biggest flaw by a metric ton: progression. You might want to sit down for this one. Here's how progression works in Dream Team. There are 4 zones with 3 acts with a boss at the end. Those 3 acts each have 5 mini-levels where you do small individual challenges in sections of that act to collect this game's MacGuffins, the Dream Orbs. The more Dream Orbs you get, the more you progress through the game. Here's my problem with this system, because in total you'll have to go through the same level you already went through 5 times to collect the Dream Orbs. Sometimes you don't have to and you'll be able to collect the orbs you need by mini act 3, but eventually the later acts in this game will have such high orb requirements that you'll need to go back and do more acts anyway. And that wouldn't be so bad if you did fun things in the act, but you're not. You either have to collect keys hidden around the stage like a treasure hunting stage in SA2, except you always know where the keys exactly are, so what's the point? Have a time travel act where you need to pass through loops in a time limit, except they're so impeccably generous with the time limit it doesn't matter, or another character section in the same act you've already done, and it's just boring. So in total, you'll have to play through the same level 5 times to do boring challenges to get the Dream Orbs to go to the next act, and then you rinse and repeat through the exact same thing again. Eventually, by Zone 3, I felt so sick of this game. It's fun. When you're doing high-speed platforming in open areas, it's pretty enjoyable, but it feels so limited by being a mobile game that has to last as long as it can that it ruins the enjoyment I could have had. After you begrudgingly beat all the levels, you get to the zone boss. The first 2 bosses are nothing special. Hit the weak spot, blah blah blah. The only thing of importance is that they make a giant enemy crab joke in the first one. But the third boss is a pretty cool one with this creepy guy being able to switch reality, so you need to go through different challenges to reach the boss and hit it. The final boss, however, is barely a boss and more so a giant level where you use every character to beat Nightmare Eggman. And it's not a bad thing, it's just kind of disappointing. After that, everybody goes home and the game ends. Overall, Sonic Dream Team was a game with so much potential, and while I think its positives are stellar, its negatives ruined a lot of my experience. And while the bonus content with Shadow looks fun, I don't think it can save what is otherwise a B- Sonic game. And that's all the Sonic mobile games. I think they all serve their purpose well for what you expect out of a mobile game, which is why, aside from Mania Netflix, Jump Fever, and Runner's Adventure, I can't call any of them bad. After Dream Team showed a lot of promise and the new game Sonic Rumble appears to be a fun time, by the way, if you're wondering why I didn't discuss it, I can't exactly play it because they keep delaying it. Sega, what are you doing? I'm very interested to see what's next for Sonic on the phone, but that's all for me. Hipster out. and Play Runners, it's the best one.